Steffi Forrester's fingertip traced the edge of her glass office window as she summoned Daphne Clark back to Los Angeles, well aware that the Queen of Fragrance's sensational fall from grace in Paris had become industry legend. Once the uncontested perfume princess of Paris couture, Daphne had departed under a storm of scandal, rumors of counterfeit petals, whispered accusations of stolen formulas, and, above all, a heart so broken it threatened every legacy she'd ever built. And now Steffi, determined to rescue Forrester Creations' sagging sales figures, was gambling everything on Daphne's triumphant comeback. The new fragrance line, dubbed Eternal Embrace, was to be the centerpiece of the spring collection, a symphony of white tea, violet leaves, cashmere musk, and a single, clandestine note that only Daphne knew how to unlock. At the launch gala, under the sweeping skylight of the Forrester penthouse, industry titans would gather to witness the rebirth of a legend. But beneath the polished marble and fragrant clouds, tension hummed like static before a storm, for Daphne carried in her suitcase more than prototype vials. She carried a secret love, a one-sided, burning passion for Carter Walton, the stoic head of design whose loyalty to Steffi and unwavering professionalism had earned him a gilded reputation. Daphne had watched Carter from afar for months before the scandalized exodus, memorizing the slope of his shoulders, the quiet intensity in his gaze whenever he drafted a new gown or sketched a daring silhouette. She had penned pages of verses, fragrant odes to his steadfast kindness, and tucked them into the scent compendium she used to develop her blends. But when whispers of corporate espionage reached her ears, and she felt Carter's disappointment like a dagger in her heart, Daphne fled Paris overnight, leaving behind broken dreams and a trail of questions. Now, in LA, her arrival was veiled in secrecy. Word hadn't yet reached Circe, Ridge, or Brooke. Daphne insisted her hiatus had been a period of reflection, a chance to purify her craft. Yet in her luggage, hidden beneath layers of tissue and silk pouches, sat the corresponding letters Carter would never receive, poignant admissions of her love, inked in perfumer's oil that filled the page with faint, floral scents. As Steffi introduced Daphne back into the fold, seated at a modern glass table flanked by Forrester executives, Daphne's composure was near perfect, her auburn hair swept back, skin luminous, her perfume debuting itself even before she spoke. "I've returned to reawaken Forrester's spirit," she announced, voice velvety with both confidence and tremor, "to create a scent that will remind the world why we fell in love with fashion." Applause rippled through the room, and even Donna Logan's sharp gaze softened at the sight of her former rival's dignity. But across the table, Carter felt something shift. The tang of something familiar, jasmine with a trace of sandalwood, wafted in the recycled air. His chest tightened. He exchanged a puzzled glance with Zend, who whispered, "You smell that?" Carter clenched his jaw and nodded, his mind racing back to midnight sessions in the Paris atelier where Daphne had shown him her experimental fusions. Each layer of Eternal Embrace held echoes of Daphne's heartbreak and hope, white tea for resilience, violet for longing, cashmere musk for comfort, but one hidden accord, a rare orchid extract, embodied unspoken devotion. When the first bottles rolled off the line, each engraved with Daphne's initials entwined with a slender, golden flourish, Steffi watched as pre-orders soared, but so did the ripple of suspicion. Whispers began to drift. Why was Daphne so silent about her past in Paris? Why did she decline all interviews, citing creative sanctity? More dangerously, why did Carter appear unsettled every time the new scent was mentioned? One afternoon, as Daphne stood in the design studio supervising the perfume packaging, Carter approached her quietly. She turned, eyes bright, and he tasted the words on his tongue before he spoke. "Why didn't you ever tell me the truth?" Her breath caught. The letters, did he know? She watched him, the blueprint of a new bottle cap in one hand, the violet petals she'd used for infusions drying in a dish on the table. The truth, she asked, voice trembling only slightly. About what? Carter's expression was taut with hurt he barely understood. About us in Paris. About why you really left. About those nights I thought we were just colleague and muse. His words, soft but loaded, sent a shiver through her. Around them, mannequins draped in Forrester's latest designs seemed to lean in, eavesdropping. Daphne's pulse thundered as she placed the cap back on the table. I was afraid, she confessed, voice low enough for only him to hear. Afraid that if you knew how deeply I felt, how every accord I formulated was inspired by you, you'd only see a desperate artist, not an equal. Carter lifted a strand of her hair, tucked loose at her neck, and inhaled. But I did see you, he whispered, and I still do. Yet you left without a word. Daphne closed her eyes, tears pooling despite her resolve. And I should have stayed to explain. Instead, I ran. Just then, Steffi's sharp heels clicked, and she rounded the corner, her practiced smile in place. But her eyes flicked between Daphne and Carter, reading the confession in the charged silence. Later that night, at the official launch in the grand ballroom, rows of awaited critics and influencers poised their phones like bats ready to strike. Music swelled, and Daphne emerged on stage in a sleek black gown, each fold stitched to mirror the scent's cascading notes. Steffi introduced her, nodding proudly, but watched as Daphne's eyes scanned the crowd, seeking Carter in the shadows. When he stood to join her on stage, drawn by concern and unresolved longing, the audience gasped. The cameras panned to capture their reunion, Daphne's hand brushing his fingers curling around hers. It was a live reveal of a hidden chapter no one saw coming. Social media exploded as hashtags like #BoldReturn and #DaphneandCarter began trending. Industry blogs speculated about a new power couple, about the fragrance's secret muse. But inside the Forrester boardroom the next morning, Forrester Creations' CFO squinted at morning sales numbers and whispered to Donna, "We've never sold this many units before, but will this scandal overshadow the product?" Donna sighed. "Drama sells too," she muttered. Meanwhile, Steffi confronted Daphne in the hushed corridors of the design wing. "You went off script," Steffi accused, arms crossed. "You weren't supposed to become part of the story, just the creator of it." Daphne met her gaze evenly. "True stories resonate," she replied. "And Carter, he's real." Steffi's jaw worked. "I need control, Daphne. Consultancy, not confessions." Daphne's response was a slow smile, equal parts forgiveness and defiance. "Then perhaps it's time you let the fragrance speak for itself, and for me." With that, Daphne walked away, knowing that the room and her heart would never be the same. In the weeks that followed, the Eternal Embrace campaign dazzled billboards from Sunset Boulevard to Rodeo Drive. Carter and Daphne appeared together in interviews, her revealing the ingredients, him praising her artistry, and the air around them shimmered with both creativity and chemistry. Yet every evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Daphne would retreat to her office and open a letter she'd finally dared to send. The page glowed with the faint trace of orchid and violet, her inked confession of love now complete. And somewhere, in a city powered by reinvention, two hearts beat in sync with the fragrance that had brought them home. Just hours after Daphne Clark's private jet touched down at LAX, she strode through the sliding doors of Forrester Creations with the fierce confidence of a queen reclaiming her throne. Her auburn waves tumbled over the sharp shoulders of a tailored ivory blazer, and her green eyes burned with purpose as she caught sight of Carter Walton arranging sample sprays for the debut of Eternal Embrace. Without hesitation, Daphne approached him, the click of her heels echoing like a challenge across the polished marble floor. Carter looked up, his blue eyes widening at the sight of the woman whose name had become both legend and scandal in Paris, and for a moment the world fell silent. Then Daphne leaned in, her voice a rich murmur carrying the whisper of cashmere musk and stolen violet petals. "Carter," she said, extending a hand that gleamed with an engagement ring, like shimmer from the studio lights, "I want you to be the face of eternal embrace. No one else embodies its soul the way you do." The studio's fluorescent glow seemed to dim as Carter's pulse thundered in his ears. The proposal was brazen, far more than any marketing strategy Steffi Forrester would have greenlit. But unmistakably powerful. With that single offer, Daphne had thrown down a gauntlet at Hope Logan's feet. Hope, who had hurried in, fresh from her early morning fitting with Thomas Forrester, froze at the threshold of the design bay. She watched as Carter's hand hesitated above Daphne's, the promise of collaboration glinting between them. A cold wave of jealousy rolled through her, a sensation she'd never known before to this extent. And her dreams of a life intertwined with Carter's creativity fractured into 1,000 glittering shards. Hope's first instinct was to retreat, to slip back into the sanctity of her fitting room, and let the moment pass like so many others she deemed unimportant. But memories of stolen kisses in the greenhouse, whispered confessions beneath the canopy of the Forrester rose trellis, rallied her spirit. She had built her bond with Carter on trust and shared laughter, on late-night talks about their hopes for the future, even if she'd never voiced the fear that Daphne's return would tip the scales of his affection. Now, with every fiber of her being aflame, she stepped forward into the glare of that moment. "Carter," she called, her voice steady though her heart pounded like a war drum. "What is this?" Carter glanced between the two women. Between the poised genius who had resurrected Forrester's sagging fragrance line and the woman whose faith in him had never wavered. He swallowed, caught in a tangle of loyalty and desire, and offered Hope the hint of a reassuring smile. "Daphne approached me with a proposal," he said carefully, removing his hand from the air between them. "She believes I can bring eternal embrace to life in a way that will resonate with our customers. It's flattering." Hope's chest tightened as she fought to keep her composure. "And you're going to do it?" Caroline Spencer's distant laughter drifted in from the other wing of the studio, a reminder that business must go on, regardless of the emotional battlefield forming in this room. Carter hesitated, aware that any answer would tip the delicate balance. "I haven't given her an answer yet," he said, his tone diplomatic. "I need to think it through." Daphne's eyes narrowed, and for a heartbeat Hope feared she'd lash out. Instead, Daphne inclined her head, her posture regal yet cool. "Of course," she said. "I wouldn't expect anything less from you, Carter. But just know that I value your artistry above all." Then, without another word, she pivoted and swept away, leaving Hope and Carter alone amid the sea of prototype bottles and perfume blotters. The silence descended like a cloak. Hope took a step toward him, the edge of panic in her voice softening into vulnerability. Do you want this?" "With her?" Carter looked at her, really looked, his brow furrowing as though he could read every unspoken fear behind her emerald gaze. "Hope, you know I choose authenticity," he said, his hand reaching for hers on the table. "Not because I'm avoiding your question, but because I need to be true to what feels right for me and for Forrester Creations. Daphne's arrival changes things, but it doesn't erase what we have." Spare words, but they cracked the freeze around Hope's heart. She swallowed, trying to believe him as she pulled her hand back, wrapping her arms around herself. "If this is about business," she whispered, "I can't compete with her reputation." Carter's expression softened with regret. "It shouldn't have to be a competition," he said, stepping closer so that his voice dipped to a private timbre. Hope, you're the one who stood by me when no one else saw my vision. You walked those corridors with me when the early sketches seemed like nothing. You believed in me. Those words were a balm, but Hope still recoiled from the memory of Daphne's unwavering gaze as she'd made her offer. She's here to save the fragrance department, my department. I barely know her, and she's offering you the world. Carter closed the gap between them, his own insecurity flashing in his eyes. It's not about who offers what, it's about whose vision aligns with mine. Hope's pulse quickened at his proximity, and she forced a smile even as the pang of jealousy lingered. So, what do you want, Carter? To be the face of eternal embrace, or the face beside me? His eyes darkened with earnestness. I want to build something that lasts with you. Behind her, Daphne paused by a studio pillar, arms folded, listening. When she realized they were not aware of her presence, she lifted her chin and moved forward, each step deliberate as a dancer's. Pardon the interruption, she said, her tone polite but edged with steel. I came to offer my collaboration, not to sow discord. Hope's shoulders stiffened, but Carter raised a hand to still her. Hope, Daphne is an asset to this line, he said. Her expertise is why Eternal Embrace will succeed. But we have to decide how to do this together as a team. Daphne's lips curved into a small, knowing smile as she appraised the pair. Collaborative strength, that's the essence of any lasting creation, she agreed. I have no wish to undermine your relationship, Carter. Only to amplify the fragrance with our combined talents. Hope's heart pounded so loudly she feared Daphne might hear it. Then let's decide together, she said, steeling herself. If you and I will be together in this, professionally and personally, then let's lay it all on the table. For a moment, the three of them stood in tense equilibrium, as if the next words would tip the world off its axis. At last Carter exhaled. I propose we meet tonight, Daphne, Hope, and I over dinner. We'll chart out a plan, marketing, creative vision, roles. And we'll work through any concerns face to face. Hope blinked, then nodded, the fight rising in her chest. Fine, she said, her voice crisp. But I won't stand by while my future is hazy. Daphne inclined her head, the sheen of truce in her eyes. Agreed. As the studio lights hummed overhead, the three formed an unlikely alliance, bound by ambition and love, ready to wage both professional and personal battles in equal measure. Yet Hope knew that as the sun set over Sunset Boulevard, the lines would be drawn, ally or adversary. And only time would reveal who would emerge as Carter's true muse. In that moment, every heartbeat counted, every glance was a declaration, and the scent of rivalry, tinged with violet and musk, hung heavy in the air.